Have you ever had someone you loved and trusted betray you in a way that made your blood boil? Not a simple lie, but a betrayal so deep it shakes the foundation of who you are. Imagine for a moment if you could take your revenge without uttering a single word. No shouting, no confrontation, just a calculated silence that speaks volumes. Let me tell you how I did just that. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 29 years old. I live in a small town in South Carolina, just a few miles outside of Charleston. Growing up here in the peaceful, unassuming suburbs, you get used to the comfort of familiarity. You build your life around people you think will always have your back, family, friends, lovers. But what happens when one of those people shatters everything you've built? When the trust you've held onto so dearly is torn apart, leaving you with nothing but a gaping hole in your chest. I've spent most of my life believing in the good in people. I was raised by parents who taught me the value of loyalty and respect, and I carried those lessons into adulthood. I thought I knew how to spot the good ones. And then, of course, there was Amanda. She was more than a friend. She was my sister, my confidant, the person I thought would never let me down. But like so many stories go, my blind trust led me straight into a trap. It's strange how betrayal works, isn't it? It doesn't always come in a form you can easily recognize. There's no big moment that screams, "This is it." Instead, it sneaks up on you, slowly, quietly, until one day, you realize you've been played by the one person who should have never done it. But once I saw it, once I finally understood what she had done, I felt something cold surge through me, a desire for revenge, not in the way you might think, but in a way that would leave her drowning in the silence of her own guilt. This is my story. The story of how I exacted my revenge, not with anger or a confrontation, but with the most powerful weapon I had. My silence. I've always been the kind of person who values honesty above all else. Growing up in a tight-knit family, surrounded by friends who felt like family, I learned early on that loyalty and trust were the foundations of any strong relationship. If you had someone's back, they had yours. That was the rule. Simple. Straightforward. One person who epitomized that trust was Amanda. We were inseparable. We had been best friends since high school, sharing everything, secrets, dreams, heartbreaks. She knew me better than anyone. I trusted her with my deepest fears, my wildest hopes, and the most vulnerable parts of myself. In many ways, she was like a sister to me. More than that, she was someone I had always believed in. She was the one who would never let me down. At least, that's what I thought. Amanda had a way about her, a charm that made people gravitate toward her. Her laughter was infectious, and her smile could light up the darkest room. People trusted her, confided in her, admired her. But looking back, I realize now that this warmth, this ability to draw people in, was nothing more than a carefully crafted mask. Underneath it all, Amanda had an agenda of her own, a manipulative side I never saw coming. She didn't just play the game, she controlled it, and I was one of her pawns. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. It didn't come with shouting or drama. It was quiet, subtle, a whisper in the wind that I refused to hear until it was too late. I had just wrapped up a business deal, one I thought would change everything for me. It was big. I was finally on the brink of something successful, something that could secure my future. I told Amanda about it naturally. She was my confidant, after all. But what I didn't know was that she'd already been working behind my back. While I was dreaming of success, she was making sure I wouldn't get it. She had quietly aligned herself with my competitors, feeding them information she'd gathered from me over the years, using my secrets to her advantage. I found out when the deal fell apart, suddenly and without explanation. My reputation was torn apart by false claims, and the financial loss was crippling. Everything I had worked for crumbled in an instant. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing the truth. Amanda had played me. She wasn't just a bystander or an innocent friend caught in the crossfire. No, she had orchestrated this entire mess, manipulating everything to her own advantage. What made it even worse was the realization that this wasn't just a one-time thing. The betrayal had been brewing for months, maybe even longer. As I pieced the puzzle together, I saw how she had carefully crafted her lies, weaving them into my trust, all while positioning herself for a much bigger gain. Every conversation we'd had, every secret I'd shared, had been part of her plan. She had been playing both sides for months, setting me up for the fall that would propel her forward. I felt the ground beneath me shift, and the anger that built up inside me was suffocating. But instead of rushing to confront her, something else began to take hold of me. A calm, calculated silence. And with that silence, I would make her pay. When I first discovered what Amanda had done, rage was the only thing I could feel. My chest was tight, my fists clenched, and my thoughts swirled with 1,000 ways to make her pay. I wanted to confront her, shout at her, demand an explanation, and make her feel the weight of her actions. But as the anger surged through me, I realized something. That wouldn't be enough. I had always been someone who believed in justice, in making things right. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that confronting Amanda directly wouldn't give me the satisfaction I craved. It would give her the power to twist the narrative, to play the victim, to turn the situation into something it wasn't. And that's exactly what she'd done all along. Manipulated people, turned situations in her favor, and made herself the center of every story. I couldn't give her that power again. The truth was, I didn't want to waste my energy on words. Words would give her a chance to fight back. What I needed was something far more powerful, something that would break her, without her even knowing it. I decided then that the best form of revenge wasn't to confront her at all. It was to say nothing, to become a shadow in her life, to withdraw emotionally, to make her feel invisible, to force her to question her own worth. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But the silence wasn't just about ignoring her. It was about making every interaction, every moment, a silent reminder of her betrayal. It was about taking away the thing she valued the most, my presence. At first, it was subtle. I didn't answer her texts right away. I let the phone ring. I didn't make the first move to plan our get-togethers. I stopped sharing personal details. No more late-night conversations where I poured my heart out. Every time she tried to engage with me, I met her with a smile, but that was it. Nothing more, nothing less. The emptiness in my responses spoke volumes. It was small, barely noticeable at first, but as the days went by, something started to change in her. I could see it in the way she looked at me, those moments when her smile faltered, when she caught my cold, distant gaze. It was like a crack in her armor, one that only grew wider with each passing day. She wasn't used to this. She wasn't used to being ignored, to having no one to manipulate, no one to control. She had been the puppet master for so long, and now, without a word from me, she was the one left tangled in her own strings. But I wasn't done yet. I started withdrawing even more. I stopped engaging in group settings where she was present. I avoided eye contact and left rooms when she walked in. When she asked me questions, I gave her nothing, just a nod or a short, non-committal answer. It wasn't just the words that were missing, it was my energy. My emotional withdrawal was far more unsettling than anything I could have said. And soon I noticed something else. Amanda, the confident, charismatic woman who had always commanded the attention of everyone around her, began to lose that power. She started second-guessing herself. I saw her try to regain control in small, desperate ways, talking louder, trying to provoke me into a reaction, but I didn't give in. I stayed silent. It was working. Slowly but surely, my silence was chipping away at her confidence. She had no idea what to do with it. No words to fight back with, no arguments to twist. She was drowning in the emptiness I had created. And I felt a strange peace. Because in that silence, I had found a power greater than any confrontation could offer. The first few days were easy. It was almost like slipping into a comfortable silence where nothing was expected from me and nothing was given in return. I hadn't yet fully realized the power of this quiet withdrawal, but it felt right. In those initial moments, I wasn't thinking about how my silence would affect Amanda. I was simply focusing on the space it created for me. At first, Amanda didn't notice. She had always been the center of attention, surrounded by people who hung on her every word. I had always been there too, part of the backdrop, laughing along, sharing stories. But now I stopped. I stopped telling her about my day. I stopped sharing my thoughts, my fears, my hopes. When we met at family events or social gatherings, I didn't seek her out for conversation. I didn't smile the way I used to. I just existed in the same space, but no longer with the same connection. There were subtle changes, tiny moments I barely noticed at first. I began to avoid eye contact when she spoke to me. Instead of meeting her gaze with the familiar warmth, I let my eyes wander, my mind quiet, my heart distant. It was as though I had become a stranger to her. I felt the satisfaction of keeping myself to myself. But Amanda, as clever and manipulative as she was, wasn't blind. The first sign that something was off came at a family gathering. We were all in the living room, chatting about the latest gossip, when Amanda tried to pull me into the conversation just as she always had. But instead of the usual response, where I would laugh and contribute, this time, I stayed silent. She waited. The silence hung between us, thick and heavy, like a wall she couldn't climb over. The other conversations continued around us, but I could see her shift uncomfortably, her eyes flicking to mine, hoping for some sign of acknowledgement. But there was none. I didn't meet her gaze. I stayed quiet. At first, Amanda tried to laugh it off. She tossed a playful comment my way, one of her signature, charming remarks, but I didn't respond. Her smile faltered. She glanced around, perhaps searching for an ally, but there was no one. The other people in the room were busy, unaware of what was happening. But Amanda wasn't used to being ignored. She wasn't used to having her presence unacknowledged. It became a pattern after that. I went to meetings, to events, to dinners, and every time she was there, I made sure to give her nothing, no greeting, no conversation, no acknowledgement. The more I withdrew, the more I saw her struggle. She would attempt to draw me in with small talk, but I wouldn't bite. I'd nod politely, offering nothing more. She didn't react at first, but I could see the cracks starting to form. Small things at first, a puzzled look, a shift in posture, when she realized I wasn't responding to her like I used to. Then there were moments when I could see her pause mid-sentence, as if trying to figure out why my silence felt so heavy, so different. And that's when it started, the first sign that my silence was having an effect on her. She started to second-guess herself. I saw her try to cover it up, pretending everything was fine, but there was a hesitation in her movements, a slight falter in her voice. Amanda, who had always been the picture of confidence, suddenly seemed unsure. She'd glance at me, waiting for a response, but I gave her nothing. The insecurity, the doubt, crept into her eyes. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I could feel the shift. She had always been the one pulling the strings, the one in control, and now she was the one questioning herself. She began to wonder why she wasn't getting the reaction she was used to. Why wasn't I reacting to her provocations? Why wasn't I biting at her bait like before? She couldn't figure it out. And that uncertainty, that confusion, started to gnaw at her. The emotional impact of my silence was beginning to show. Amanda was no longer the confident, manipulative woman she used to be. I could see it in the way she carried herself now, more guarded, more aware of every move she made. The more I pulled away, the more desperate she became for some sign of attention, some validation. But I was no longer playing her game. And that, more than anything, was the sweetest revenge. Amanda wasn't used to losing control. She'd built her world around manipulation, around weaving webs of deceit that left everyone around her dancing to her tune. But with every passing day, as I continued to withdraw into silence, I could see the cracks in her armor begin to widen. The more I held back, the more desperate she became. At first, she tried to regain control in the way she knew best, by pulling more strings. She started to manipulate others, trying to turn the people around us against me. But the more she tried, the more she was met with the cold indifference I had mastered. She'd set up small traps, casual conversations designed to get me to react, but I saw them coming every time. I refused to give her the satisfaction. Her friends, the people who once rallied around her, started to drift away. She'd approach them, charming as ever, but the relationships began to feel strained. People who once hung on her every word now saw her for what she truly was, an opportunist, a puppet master with a hidden agenda. They began to see the shifts, the subtle lies that had woven themselves into her interactions. One by one, they started distancing themselves, choosing neutrality, or even offering their support to me. Amanda was losing allies. She was losing respect. The consequences were beginning to show on her side. Her confidence wavered. She no longer stood tall at the center of every conversation. Her attempts to assert dominance, whether in social settings or in private, fell flat. I could see it in her eyes when she caught sight of me. She couldn't control the narrative anymore. I wasn't reacting. I wasn't participating in her drama. But Amanda, being the manipulative person she was, couldn't accept defeat. She wasn't about to let her empire fall without a fight. She plotted, she schemed, and soon enough, she made her last-ditch attempt to regain control. It happened one evening at a small dinner gathering. The group was chatting around the table, but Amanda's attention was fixed on me. She had been quiet for a while, studying me, weighing her next move. Finally, she leaned across the table, her voice low, almost pleading. "Sarah, we need to talk," she said, her eyes intense. "I don't know what's going on with you, but you've changed. I've tried to be there for you. I've tried to make things right between us, but you're just shutting me out. I'm really sorry for what happened, but I need you to open up. You need to talk to me." This silence, it's not healthy. You need to stop this." There was her final play. She was trying to guilt-trip me into breaking my silence, trying to manipulate my emotions just like she had done for years. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the way she was searching for a crack in my calm demeanor. She was counting on me to respond, to argue, to break down. But I didn't. I sat there motionless. I didn't respond to her pleading eyes. I didn't let the weight of her words affect me. I didn't give her the satisfaction of any emotion. My face remained blank, neutral, and unyielding. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. The silence between us stretched, thick, and suffocating. It was unbearable for her, but not for me. I could feel her unease, her frustration growing. She was used to being in control, used to making people bend to her will with a simple word, a subtle look. But now, in the face of my silence, she was powerless. And in that moment, the twist unfolded. Amanda's carefully built facade began to crack before my eyes. She realized in that moment that she no longer had control. The games she played for so long were useless. She couldn't manipulate my emotions anymore, couldn't twist the situation into her favor. Her eyes darted around the room, as if looking for someone to validate her, to join her in her struggle. But no one did. Everyone watched the interaction in silence. No one stepped in. No one came to her rescue. Amanda's carefully constructed web of lies was unraveling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. She had always thrived on controlling people, on pushing their buttons to get what she wanted. But now, it was her who was left exposed. She stood up, abruptly, her face flushed with frustration. "I can't do this anymore," she muttered, her voice breaking. The people around the table exchanged uneasy glances as she stormed out, her exit as dramatic as ever, but her confidence gone. The silence that followed her departure was deafening. I sat there, unmoving, the quiet victory settling inside me. The silence had done its job. Amanda was now the one left alone with her guilt and her desperation. She had no one to manipulate, no one to control. And I had taken my revenge without saying a word. The silence had been the most powerful weapon I could have ever used. In the days that followed Amanda's dramatic exit, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The silence I had chosen, the silence that had been my weapon, was more powerful than I had ever anticipated. I watched from a distance as the aftermath of her betrayal unfolded, and with each passing day, it became clear that her world was unraveling. She had been a master of manipulation, always quick with a smile, a compliment, or a calculated word. But now, those same people she had controlled and used, the ones who once adored her, had begun to pull away. She was losing everyone, friends, family, colleagues, one by one. They had seen the cracks in her armor. They had seen her for what she was. And the revelation was as painful for them as it was liberating for me. I didn't need to say a word. I didn't need to confront her or call her out on what she had done. My silence had said everything. The people around her started to notice the same thing I had. How cold, how manipulative, how self-serving she truly was. Her web of lies, the one she had spent years weaving, had finally caught her. The betrayals that had once been hidden beneath layers of charm and charisma were now out in the open, and no amount of pleading or charm could fix what had been broken. Amanda began to crumble, slowly but surely. Her confidence, which once radiated from every interaction, was now nowhere to be found. She started doubting herself, questioning her worth. and in her isolation, she became increasingly desperate. There was no one left to turn to. She had alienated herself from those who had once been close, and now, with no one to manipulate, no one to twist around her finger, she was alone. The same people she had used and discarded were now the ones watching her fall from grace. I could see it all from the sidelines in the quiet moments when I was alone with my thoughts. I watched as Amanda made one last attempt to salvage what she could, trying to reach out to the people she had once relied on for validation. But they were no longer there. I saw her at social gatherings surrounded by empty spaces where once there were friends, and it struck me then she was completely isolated. Her world had turned cold and silent. Just like the silence I had used to make my point, the very thing she had used to control others had become the thing that destroyed her. The twist, however, was the most surprising part for me. I hadn't expected the sense of peace I now felt. Watching her struggle, watching her question herself, was not as satisfying as I thought it would be. I didn't feel the rush of triumph I had anticipated. Instead, I felt a deep sense of relief. I had taken my revenge, yes, but it wasn't a revenge born out of rage or the desire to see her suffer. It was a revenge born out of refusing to let her control my life any longer. What I had done was simple, yet powerful. I hadn't needed to fight fire with fire. I hadn't needed to confront her or expose her to the world. I had simply taken away the thing she valued most, my presence. By withdrawing, by refusing to engage in her manipulation, I had taken back control of my own life. And that, in the end, was the sweetest form of revenge. The emotional impact on me was profound. I was free. Free from the anger. Free from the hurt. Free from the constant push and pull of Amanda's toxic influence. I didn't need to scream, to fight, to make my point known. My silence had done all the work for me. As I moved forward, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had learned something important from this experience. True power lies not in the battles we fight, but in the battles we choose not to engage in. By refusing to play Amanda's game, I had won, and I had done it with nothing more than the quiet strength of my own resolve. And that peace, that quiet satisfaction, was more powerful than any confrontation could have ever been.